Trust me, I know. I can already hear the comments. I imagine a lot of you will even be commenting without even watching this video. Stark versus Kaido. What on earth could you be thinking, Jack? There will be half of you that are thinking Stark absolutely demolishes Kaido. How is this even a verse battle? And on the flip side, people will be like, Jack, why are you wasting your time even going over this? Obviously, Kaido is stronger. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is because I like to bring a little bit of flavor to these verse battles to give you guys matchups that you might never have even thought of before. Sometimes it's a win with no difficulty, other times it's a surprising outcome where there might be certain aspects of a character's power set that people may have overlooked. In this case, I think their power sets actually complement each other quite nicely in terms of a verse battle. They have a similar degree of offense that matches up real nicely from mid to long range energy blasts to close combat abilities to transformations. I do think that it's going to be a fun topic to go over. And hey, it's my channel. It came to me in a dream, let's say, and I wanted to talk about it. Now, what's the first thing we need to go over in this matchup? What's the most vital information that dictates how this fight would go? And it comes down to Kaido's durability. He is narratively implied to be the most durable character in all of One Piece, and this is a very, very important statement because in any verse battle, in any power scaling video I do, I don't care what calcs you throw up on the screen, it needs to fit with the narrative of the story. Because otherwise, you're no longer even power scaling the initial medium that you love so much. You need to be putting narrative in there and mix it in. You can use some headcanony type of stuff. You can go crazy with calcs and power scaling chaining. I sure as hell do. I might even in this video. But it needs to have a baseline of narrative implication. Now, the issue with Kaido being narratively the most durable character is that Oda uses Kaido as a measuring stick to gauge how powerful the other members on his cast actually are. Because we see Kaido get injured by a few different people. We see it by Odin, we see it by Luffy, we see it by Zoro, we see it by Law, we see it, well, we don't see it, but we can then infer that people like Rox and Roger and Garp and Whitebeard and people like Shanks, who was able to delay Kaido. We can then assume that all those characters would also be able to injure Kaido. So while he seems impenetrable when he first gets introduced, he does have signs of fragility that his immense presence might kind of mislead people into thinking. And it makes it very difficult to power scale exactly where his durability sits. I've done my best job at it. There's room for error, but here's my reasoning behind it. And it comes down to Luffy. Luffy, being the main character, has the most screen time, the most fights, and is the easiest to get a gauge on just how powerful he is. Now, Luffy, in as early as Dressrosa, I would say gets into that tier of small island levels of AP. And you might be thinking, whoa, Jack, that's crazy. Island level in One Piece that early in the series. But hear me out. Island level feats we see quite a lot in the series. The most obvious one is someone like Whitebeard, who is said to be able to destroy the world. Now, I don't think that statement is as straightforward as it seems, and we might even touch on that a little bit in the future of this video. But we have people like Luffy being able to punch Doflamingo through Dressrosa. We have Doflamingo himself being able to use the birdcage technique, which is going to destroy all of Dressrosa. Not to like the atomic level or anything like that, but destroy it enough where if it isn't a small island level feat, it's goddamn close to it. We also, in that very same arc, have Don Chinchou being known to split an ice continent. Now, I am going to say that that feat in of itself is a bit of a grey area, because if he's small, even if he's small continent level, let's not even get into large continent level, even if he's small continent level based on that feat, Luffy being able to take him out quite easily, even in his old age, puts Luffy at a level of AP that is just crazy and would break that narrative that we talk about, at least that early in the series. So we have people also like Kuma, who is able to use his like Ursa shock to destroy a lot of Thriller Bark, the island there, and we know that he was holding back because of not wanting to hurt the Straw Hats any more than necessary, meaning if he was enraged, I could definitely see that being an island level feat in and of itself. But I would say just based off that, we can put Luffy very comfortably at small island level. Now, then he goes into Whole Cake Island, where we can assume that he's gotten stronger. If not a full sub tier, going from small island to mid island level AP, he's certainly got stronger. That's just basic shonen power scaling etiquette. Characters usually get stronger after their fights, whether or not that's from the experience of the fight or from training in the background off screen that we don't see in between arcs. Generally speaking, they get a little bit stronger. But even more than that, Katakuri himself is everything that Luffy is, but stronger. He's more physically stronger. He's faster. He's better at haki. The whole narrative through line, and once again, the word narrative, the whole narrative through line of that arc is Luffy surpassing Katakuri. Meaning that if Luffy himself sits at about small island levels durability, which we can take that from based off Doflamingo's attack power being, if not small island, very, very close to it, with Luffy getting a little bit stronger, we can then imply that Luffy's durability is at small island level, which we can then put Katakuri's durability at mid island level definitively. The reason being, because we know that Katakuri at the start of Whole Cake Island is stronger than Luffy. So Luffy takes down a mid-island level durable character, a mid-island level defensive character like Katakuri, putting his AP at mid-island level by the time of Wano. Now, this is very important because what does he do when he gets to Wano? He fights Kaido. How does that fight go for him? Not very fucking well. He rains down blows like thunder on Kaido. Kaido's in his dragon form. He's in Gear 4th. There's elephant guns. There's King Kong guns. And he kind of lays the smackdown on Kaido. And it does zilch. Zero, nada. Kaido does not get injured whatsoever from this. Meaning, we have to put Kaido's durability at a minimum at large island level, thanks to the mid island level Luffy's attack power doing nothing. However, Kaido not only kind of just negated his attacks, he laughed it off. He essentially got his dick out and wiped it on Luffy's face because he just didn't even get a scratch. He got a slight headache, if that. Or no, that was when he jumped off a massive island. It wasn't a slight headache. It cleared him up of his drunkenness, which is going to be a very important aspect we get into a bit later. Meaning that I feel comfortable enough to not just put him one sub tier above Luffy's attack power, but two sub tiers, bringing him into a new tier of strength and calling him small country levels of durability. But wait, it gets more. Luffy in this arc gets stronger. He masters armament haki. Now, this in of itself isn't a straight AP boost for him because he is kind of negating defense a little bit by kind of attacking Kaido internally, but he also masters Conqueror's haki, being able to coat his attacks in this, which is definitely a strength increase that Luffy gets. Now, if Luffy is getting his strength and his AP increased thanks to this Conqueror's Haki improvement, Kaido's durability even needs to go up further. Because while he's not completely tanking them, he's tanking them enough to get up without too much issue, which would then put Kaido's durability at mid-country level. Now, it potentially gets more, but I'm more on the fence with it. Luffy gets another power up in this arc going into Gear 5th, which would then imply that Kaido's durability should go up even a little bit more. Because people forget, Luffy doesn't just go Gear 5th and wipe the floor with Kaido. It is a very back and forth battle, meaning Kaido's durability would go up to large country level, but It's hard to say for certainty because you could argue that that increase in power is specifically just around Luffy's hacks abilities. Whether or not it increased his base stats is a little bit more up for debate. So for right now, I'm going to keep the conservative answer, and I'm going to what's the word? I am going to scale Kaido in as mid-level defenses, mid-level. Come on, Jack, be a little bit more better at explaining things. Mid-country levels of durability. Now, where does Stark sit with this? Can Stark get through mid-country levels of durability? Can he get through that amount of defense? The short answer is yes. It's not it's still close. It's not like by a wide margin, but I would say he can get through it comfortably enough. The reason being is because I scale Stark at about small continent levels of AP. Why do I think that? I did a video on it just recently where I discussed all four, well, not all four, I discussed who is the strongest Espada with four contenders. It's probably already up on screen. And in that video, Ulquiorra, Yami, Baragan, Stark, each a fan favorite of the community. Well, Yami isn't really a fan favorite, but he's certainly narratively implied to be a contender at least. And I go over it and I discuss all of their stats. Now, I've been referencing this video a lot, so any mega fans, please forgive me for that. But it is a very useful video to kind of not have to explain myself for 20 minutes. So, a short answer on why he's continent level. Grimjow's AP I would put as with his Gran Racero at large island levels of attack power. Now, Ulquiorra himself does a more impressive feat where if Grimjow's attack power in Gran Racero is large island level, I apologize if I misspoke there, but large island level attack power, then Ulquiorra, who, because Ichigo blocked Grimjow's Gran Racero, I'm all over the place, I apologize, is able to block Grimjow's Gran Racero, which is a large island level feat. We can assume that it's large island based on the scaling of Las Noches. That is up for your own personal opinion. I consider not just the size of Las Noches, but the fact that I don't think it would just destroy all of it anyway. That's why I kind of downplay the Gran Racero more than potentially some others. But large island level there, and Ichigo is able to block it. Now, just prior to that, literally, before getting unconscious, he fights Ulquiorra, and Ulquiorra does more damage against Ichigo with just a normal base Cero, meaning a base Cero from Ulquiorra at minimum is large island level, most likely though small country level, and then you could argue that the stats into his resurrection gets increased by one full tier, putting him sitting at around that small continent level, large country level if you want to be conservative. Now, Stark is also stronger than that. Segunda Epata, where that's a different beast, but just based off Murcielago and Ulquiorra's base stats, Stark is definitely stronger than that, meaning we need to bring his attack power up higher than what Ulquiorra can show at that time, 4 stages higher, putting him at around small continent level to be more on the conservative side. I could see arguments for mid-continent level, but for me, small continent levels of AP. So Stark can definitely get through Kaido's defenses. Can Kaido injure Stark, though? That might be more of an interesting topic. Now, Kaido's attack power is very interesting, and I've wrote them all down here just so I don't forget anything in terms of forgetting the exact kind of category or subcategory I put a character. I would put Kaido at mid country levels of attack power. Where did I get that number from? It's very fair that you might call me on it because it's very, very subjective. One Piece is harder to power scale than Bleach because there's more concrete displays of visual power representation of Bleach than One Piece. But the reason why I went mid-country level, we've already established that in Whole Cake Island, Luffy is mid-island levels of attack power. Now, we can also scale his durability to about mid-island level as well, thanks to what we were talking about Katakuri being at least a sub-tier stronger than everything Luffy showed in Dressrosa, putting Luffy's durability at about mid-island level if we then compare him to a more empowered Katakuri who he eventually surpasses. meaning Kaido's AP, where in his first fight with Luffy, where he beats him in one shot, would be then a very similar scaling to his durability, at least one tier higher because he was able to just one shot him, and the fact that we know that he could have been holding back there and it wasn't his full power, he at least goes to small country level, and we're just rehashing right now because Luffy gets stronger in Wano, meaning Kaido's attack power needs to be more powerful, putting him at putting him at I'm all over the place, Jack. We had him at small country levels of attack power, putting him at mid country levels of attack power. Now, once again, with his durability, there's an argument to be made that he's large country level of attack power. I personally like it at mid country level. One reason I don't like it at large country level is because I wholeheartedly believe that the most powerful character in terms of AP in this series is Whitebeard. Once again, this is where the narrative comes into it. He is implied to be able to destroy the entire world, the entire planet. Now, I don't think he can do that in just one shot. I don't think he can sneeze out an earthquake that just destroys everything. I think, though, that he has the power to end all life, hopping from like island or continent to continent, and just earthquake after earthquake, tsunami after effects, and destroy everything that way. I don't think he's doing it in one blast, though. So I put a raged Whitebeard, once again, keyword there, an enraged Whitebeard at large continent levels of AP, and I don't believe that there is any AP in One Piece that gets higher than that. Now, Roger himself, we could then scale to, I'm going to be generous and say mid-continent level rather than large continent level, but you could potentially even say small continent level. The reason why I say this is because I reckon large continent level for Whitebeard is enraged Whitebeard. We at least see some clashes between Roger and Whitebeard where he's not enraged, bringing his attack power down slightly to mid-continent level. But you could also put it down even further because the way Oda narratively implies Whitebeard to have the strongest attack power, it would mean that uh, Roger is fighting with techniques that isn't just meeting Whitebeard blow for blow. That's certainly an outcome you could look at it and put Roger more at small continent level rather than mid. But mid is fine as well if you do want to go down those line of thinking. Um, and if we said that they're sitting around small to mid continent level, it would make a lot more sense for characters like Kaido to be at that more mid country level, which is roughly 2 to 3 sub tiers below, which just to me makes sense. It kind of satisfies my internal ranking of each character where I'd put them in like a top 10 or a top 20. So for me, that just works. But where is Stark's durability? I would put Stark's durability, ironically enough, at small country to mid country levels. And it's worked out really well because it means that Kaido still has a fighting chance in this and can injure Stark. Why do I think it's small to mid country levels of durability? The reason being is because Grimjow can kind of be scaled to large island levels of durability. To get a basic rundown on Ichigo, and I imagine this will make people very, very angry, but at the end of the Soul Society arc, I would put Ichigo's attack power with non-holified attributes to it at large city level. Whether or not that's contentious or not, I'm not sure. That's where I'd put it though. Meaning that in his uncontrolled holified state, it would be sitting in that like mid mountain levels. Then when he masters his holification, it goes to like large mountain to small island levels. By the time he gets into his fight with Grimjow, I'd say he's sitting about that large island level, very similar to Grimjow's AP. Now we know that Noritora needs to be stronger, have stronger durability than Grimjow because he is just said to have the best durability out of any Espada. Now, Zamari says that about speed as well, and I do admit that one there is more contentious. But with durability, the way that Kubo goes out of his way to show numerous times blades just sliding off of him, he is definitely the most durable character. You could maybe argue that Stark has more thanks to being the Primera, but he doesn't show enough on-screen durability for me to rank him that highly. It's not like he kind of like just flicks away an attack or anything like that. So I do feel alright keeping Noritora as the most durable Espada. Now, if he is more just based off being Espada number 5, he should be a sub tier above Grimjow, putting him at small country levels. But then again, thanks to him being said to have the strongest Hiyori, I would then put him at mid to large country levels of durability, meaning Starrk needs to be sitting at mid to needs to be sitting at small to mid country levels of durability to not overpass Noritora in that aspect. Meaning Kaido should be able to injure Starrk and vice versa. Finally, speed. Where would I put it? They're both light speed characters. I'm not going to spend too much time discussing this. They both, this is what I meant by a good comparative here. They both literally fought men made out of light. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? I mean more that Luffy fought a man made out of light and Kaido was fighting Luffy. And One Piece speed scaling can get really, really out of hand because there's more on-screen feats of them having light speed capabilities than there are in Bleach. And if you take certain power scaling chaining, you can have them at like massively faster than light at the time of things like Egghead, which to me just doesn't make any narrative sense. Now, Starrk fought against Shunsui, who fought against Lil Barrow, who was made out of light. He was dodging those attacks. I will say that in terms of just a speed matchup, I would put actually Kaido a little bit above Starrk. I wouldn't say that they're like, faster than Light Plus or anything like that, or even like FTL to begin with. I'm just going to keep them at base light speed. Light speed is always super contentious, and I really hate talking about speed. But I would put Kaido slightly above, very, very relative though. The reason being is because One Piece has more examples of light speed scaling than Bleach does, so I'm happy to have him just a little bit faster than Starrk. Um, so that's where it will be in speed. It gives Kaido a slight advantage in close combat, but not enough that he's being able to like outspeed Stark the way he was able to do to Luffy at 1-0. But we've gone over all of their stats. We need to discuss how the fight would go now. And we're going to try to do this super speed here because we've already been here for over 20 minutes. I don't want to waste anyone's time more than necessary. How I think this fight would go. I actually think Stark would be forced to go into his resurrection very, very quickly to the point where not being able to get much done at all in a base. The reason being is because Kaido, I believe, is just much more physically impressive in close combat than Stark is. While he is quite exceptional, Stark, his greatest kind of close combat feat, I actually reckon, is his analytical ability rather than just sheer strength or speed. Now, Kaido having that slight speed advantage, having a bigger mass, a bigger size, a bigger reach, being probably more proficient in what's not Zanjutsu, but the power of his mighty club, his mighty mace. I reckon that he would push Stark into resurrection quite quickly. Stark can't even kind of respond with just normal base Ceros because Kaido would just match them with borrow breaths. It's a very similar technique. Now, Stark does have more versatility with his Ceros because he can fire them probably faster and from anywhere on his body. But I do think Kaido is strong enough to be able to, if not block them with his borrow breath, even potentially just block them with his like Thunder Bugula technique. While he is more versatile with it, I don't think it's powerful enough to be able to not make Kaido capable enough to just deflect it with a Thunder Bugula. The reason I say that is because we see Shunsui be able to tank one and not be too damaged by it, and that was being caught off guard. So I do reckon Kaido is strong enough with a Thunder Bugula to even just knock them away, putting Stark into Resurrection, which makes things very, very interesting because Kaido would respond in kind when he sees his transformation and he would go into his dragon form. Now, this is where it goes from being a close range combat battle temporarily. We're going to get into that because it's very important. And it would go into the mid to long range aspect of this fight. There would be borrow breaths with Ceros being fired off, with wind devastation air slash blades, with Tatsumaki storms being fired in, And the way I think it would work is that they would counteract each other. But the thing is, this is where Stark would really show his proficiency in fighting from mid-range, because his specific projectile attacks are faster than Kaido's, I believe. And with his Seto, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Seto Meteoretta technique, the infinite submachine gun of Seros, this is going to really cause problems for Kaido. It's going to cause so much problems that he would be able to use it to kind of just dissipate his Tatsumaku storms. He'd be able to use it to counter out the wind devastation blades, and he would certainly be able to use it to not only just deflect but continue on attacking Kaido if Kaido used a borrow breath. And I reckon Kaido is arrogant enough to take this attack head on. The reason I say this is because he takes every attack head on, meaning that he would get hit full force with a Seto Meteoretta technique, which scales in at around that small continent level, doing massive amounts of damage to him. Not enough damage to keep him down in the fight, but certainly something that he would feel, and certainly something that would reduce his strength thanks to being hit by this. The other aspect of it is that he would be in his giant dragon form first. That's not me just doing an ass pull. We see this constantly. He always goes into this form first to start a fight, or his first kind of mode of increasing his strength. He goes into the full dragon form, which is a massive, massive target to be hit by this incredibly devastating attack. Now, you could maybe argue if we had a controller up his ass and Stark went instantly into his exploding soul wolves once Kaido gets damaged by the Seto Meteoretta, that he would be able to just get the W, and I do think that is fair, because while Kaido is winded and stunned by that initial attack, the soul wolves, which are stronger than his Seto Meteoretta technique, would then just finish off the job and get the W for Stark with low to mid levels of difficulty. But that is without controller up his ass. I don't believe that Stark would respond like that. He's not bloodthirsty like certain other characters, and I think he would kind of survey the landscape of what he was able to do to Kaido. I think Kaido gets a lot of slack for being like a stupid character. I don't think he is at all. He certainly isn't as analytical as Stark. Stark definitely gets the win there. But he's smart enough to realize what's happening here, and he would go down to his hybrid form, which makes things very interesting. Because even in his hybrid form, all of his projectile elemental attacks, it just won't work on Stark. Stark is either fast enough to avoid them, or certainly fast enough and has pretty much infinite Ryatsu to be able to just deflect everything, shoot out of the sky everything Kaido throws at him. The reason why, though, this isn't just then a victory for Stark is because Kaido, knowing this, would then get in close. In his hybrid form, his speed will be even higher than base, and he'd be using his Thunder Bugler techniques and his increased speed to be putting the pressure on Stark. Now, the way this would go, I reckon Stark would get hit quite a few times and would start sustaining injuries thanks to Kaido's techniques while trying to get distance, but Kaido would be on him like a pit bull, reducing the range and not letting Stark catch his breath. Where Stark would be able to get an upper hand, though, the same trick he used against Shunsui about convincing an opponent that each gun can only do one specific thing, Kaido is both smart enough to pick up on what Stark is doing, that he is being only one gun can do like the bigger blast while the other gun can do the smaller blast. He's smart enough to see that, but not smart enough to realize he's being lured into a trap. And I reckon Stark would be able to get an attack in while Kaido's off guard and do a little bit of more damage to Kaido. I reckon from there, Kaido would probably be like laying flat on his back, being like, "What have I gotten myself into? I can't deal with this morning. I'm gonna have a drink, glug glug glug." He then goes into drunken style, his version of Rock Lee's drunken style, which actually changes things up a little bit, because that analytical nature that was probably keeping Stark from being one-shotted would then allow would then Kaido would be able to get the upper hand of, in his drunken style, Stark's analytical ability to assess his situation would kind of be thrown on its head, meaning Kaido then gets the upper hand on Stark in close combat, dealing quite a lot of damage to Stark. Now, you might be arguing, why isn't he using Soul Wolves to counteract Kaido? Very good question, and I reckon that it becomes a little bit harder to use when Kaido is getting in close to Stark, because Stark himself would get caught up in his own blast. Maybe because it's only his own soul, it doesn't affect him. If so, he gets the W with mid levels of difficulty, maybe small levels of low levels of difficulty. But I don't reckon it works that way, and he does need to get a little bit of range, which Kaido won't let him. While Stark can summon the Zero Katanas, I don't think he's proficient enough in it to be able to just keep up with Kaido and then overpower him in his Seto Zanjutsu abilities. So I do think while this is going on, Stark needs to come up with a way to get distance from Kaido. Maybe in the form of a Seto Mechuyeta done in like a 360 radius form of getting distance, then attacking with the Soul Wolves. Because we know the Soul Wolves work in an intangible format like a Logia, where Kaido can destroy them all he wants. They're just going to respawn. And I do reckon that it would be enough to eventually get Kaido and just blow him to Kingdom Come with these wolves' abilities. We see how powerful they are, where how they took down Rose and Love, and I do think these would have worked on Shunsui as well. We don't even see all of them just gang pile onto an opponent and just all obliterate, but it is his soul that he is using. He was so powerful that he was a natural born Vaso Lourdes. His spiritual energy alone was killing everyone around him, meaning he's like his soul, the aspect of his power. He can definitely do a lot of damage with these soul wolves if it goes in and all latch onto a target. And I do think he would have to come up with a very creative solution to be able to get those wolves on Kaido to get the W, because I do think Stark walks away with the W, but I do think it's actually with mid levels of difficulty. And I do think he comes away with quite a few injuries. And I reckon that if you scaled Kaido's AP a little bit higher than I personally did, if you find a power scaling chain to follow there, you could potentially give this to Kaido thanks to being able to close the distance on Stark and his attacks being having more weight behind them than where I'm currently putting him at his current attack power level. So I don't think this fight is as one-sided as it might seem, at least from my side of the community. But I do think that these are a very interesting matchup. And I'm curious how you guys think Stark would work best to get distance from Kaido. Does it work where the distance just comes from tricking him with what his guns can do? Boom, Sarah, and while he's caught off guard, the soul wolves on him. That just depends on how bloodthirsty you think Stark might be in this fight for a very laid back character. Do you like my suggestion of like a 360 radius of like infinite Ceros? We know that it's not quite infinite, but it's enough that he's not running out of energy, being able to waste his powers like this. But what happens if Kaido was able to use his flame clouds and lift an island way up into the atmosphere and drop it with enough force of like continent levels of power? That I didn't give to Kaido because it's a little bit more of a grey area, and I think Stark would destroy the island before that got the chance to get that high to do that amount of damage. But I do reckon it's a very interesting matchup, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think down below. Final verdict, like I mentioned, Stark gets the W with quite a few with substantial injuries, while getting the victory with medium levels of difficulty. Not all the way up to the hardest fight he can be in, but enough that if he slips up, he could be taken advantage of, and Kaido could get the W. It's not an implausible suggestion in my mind. But let me know down in the comments what you guys all think. If you liked the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and have a lovely day, everyone.